What is creative finance? Creative finance is non-standard financing. We do not that. Creative finance is anything that is not those two things, cash or traditional financing. Well, what is creative finance? Let me just start with what regular finance is. Regular finance is you have cash saved in the bank and you can pay for a house. This is in the context of real estate. You have cash in the bank and you can pay for a house out of pocket with that's it, straight from your cash. Next is bank financing. That's normal. Most people go pre-qualify for a bank loan. They have a I'm going to say a W-2 job that's they file a W-2 or they receive a W-2 for their taxes from the federal from their employer to file with the federal government. So you would call that person a W-2 wage earner. That is somebody who is lendable is someone who's been in their job or their industry for at least 2 years in the same industry, has had steady work in that meantime, has filed tax returns to prove their income levels, etc. Okay? And that person then applies with a traditional lender to get a conventional loan, a VA loan, that's Veterans Association or Veterans Affairs, an FHA loan, that's Federal Housing Authority, USDA loan. Like there's several different loan programs they can qualify for, but everything comes back down to do you have a decent credit score and have you got consistent job work, job history in the same industry for the last 2 years, etc. Then there's another consideration of your debt to income ratio, your monthly payments for car, rent, utilities, groceries, all the things. The financial institution is going to evaluate how much income do you have and what are your expenses that you're required to pay every month. If your expenses exceed 30, 40, 50% of your monthly income, you're not going to qualify for that loan. And they're projecting that upon your future house payment. So you can afford up to X purchase price. They'll tell you that you're pre-approved for a purchase price up to $275,000 based on your income. Great. Now you can go shopping for a house. If your monthly payment is at or below this, you can buy it. That's the basic pre-approval for a traditional home purchase. Somebody goes on the market, looks on the MLS, multiple listing service, uses realtors, engages, buys a house. There you go. We do not that. Creative finance is anything that is not those two things, cash or traditional financing. So, traditional creative finance includes seller finance. There's a whole slew of things that count as seller finance. That's a category of types of purchase and financing arrangements. There is sub two, which is what we're mainly all about here, because there's an existing loan with an existing interest rate that the seller is willing to leave in place when they sell the property, because there's a mortgage or a deed of trust or a bond, whatever you want to call it, and there's the title to the property. They're two separate things. What happens is the property changes hands. Seller sells, buyer buys. Now title's vested in the buyer, but the debt stays in the seller's name. That goes on their credit report. That stays on their credit report. So if the buyer doesn't make payments, that lowers their credit score. If the buyer does make payments on time, which is usually what happens, then the credit stays or improves overall having an account open like that. That's the crazy stuff that has lots of legalities, lots of disclosures. But any of these arrangements, I can lease it. I can lease it from you as a renter with rights to sublease it to a tenant. And I have the option to buy it, seller finance, cash, whatever method of purchase. But there are lots of ways to get into a property. We'll talk about entry strategies and exit strategies. And every deal that comes across our desk, there's an entry and an exit strategy. They don't have to match. So I could enter on cash and sell on seller finance. Because if I've got $50,000 in the bank and I can find a cheap house that's livable and I can buy it cash for 50,000 and then sell it on seller finance. So my entry strategy is cash. My exit strategy is to sell on seller finance. I can sell for maybe $60,000 to somebody. So there's an equity increase and I can charge 10% interest. That's pretty sweet. Earning 10%, that's better than most bank accounts. And it's backed by real estate. It's backed by an asset that I can force to sale if the buyer borrower doesn't pay me. So not only did I pay 50 and sell for 60, but I'm earning 10% interest on 60,000. So if I invested 50,000 at 10%, I get 10% on 50,000. But in this case, I'm getting 10% on 60,000 because I sold at 60 or I financed. So again, entry and exit strategies don't have to match, and every deal is going to have an entry strategy and an exit strategy, and they need to be aligned. Sometimes, if you know what your exit strategy is, that limits what you can do to enter. You need to set things correctly back here. That's the slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's why people come to us. They know what they want to do with it, or maybe they don't, and they need help with the contract. They need help with the negotiations. They need help with that process.